Hi and welcome. My name is Julieanne and on today's episode of The Complete Picture, we're going to take a look at a still life and how I made a few subtle changes in it in Lightroom and Photoshop, and I think made a big improvement. So I was really excited to get in the studio. Well, I can't really call it a studio, but in my little room that I call my studio, and actually set up a still life this past weekend. So I just thought I would take you through that creative process. I'm not really sure that I should show you all this, but I have the shovel and I knew that I wanted to photograph the shovel, and so I don't always have a clear image in my mind what it is I'm going to photograph. So I started with this. I've got these nice little pods in there, but it wasn't really working for me, so then I tried a rock. I liked the fact that something was broken. I liked the fact that it was more organic, and I liked the fact that you know, it kind of had to do with the earth and the shovels looking very earthy, but it still was not working for me because it's not large enough. So then I put this other kind of pod there. I didn't like that at all. So then I thought, well, maybe something bigger and something more matching in texture and less organic and more man-made, but still with the same rust. And that didn't really work either. So then I just thought I would change everything up, and now it's just looking terrible. I don't know where the egg idea came from. I don't know what the ruler means. So I just thought I better bring it back, get back to basics. What goes well with a shovel? And that is a weed. So I just went out in the garden, picked a weed, laid it down. The egg is still there. The egg has got to go. So the next shot, the egg is gone. So this is what I finally decided on working on, was this image right here. The proportion just between the two objects I really like. I really like the fact that the organic weed still has to do with the earth and the shovel, but that one is man-made and one is organic. So moving forward a little bit, I just want to show you this is actually the final piece that we'll create. And it's not very much different, and it's not very difficult at all to do in Lightroom and Photoshop. So we're going to walk through that. And then I was just going to show you just one more thing here, just to kind of, you know, even though I thought I got it with the first weed, I always like to try more things. You know, I remember somebody quoting that, you know, you want to brainstorm and come up with as many ideas as you can, and you kind of brainstorm and get the easy ideas, but then always to try to be sure to take that one step further and see if there's not something else that maybe you're missing, as opposed to just stopping at kind of the first thing that you like. So I did do more weeds, and I still came back to the one that we just saw a minute ago, this one, and so this is the one that I settled on. All right, so let's start in Lightroom right here with this image. I'm going to go ahead and move over to the Develop module. One of the things that I have already done here is I've already cropped the file. So if we tap the R key, you can see that I just have this little setup of a stool with a piece of paper on it, and we've got lights on both sides, and I photographed this, and then I just cropped it down to 1:1 by choosing my aspect ratio right over here with the crop tool. Tapping the Enter key, of course, applies that crop. It's a non-permanent crop. I can always go back and enlarge the canvas if I want to, but I've settled on this. Now I want to do as much as I can in Lightroom before jumping over to Photoshop. So one of the first things that I'm going to do is I'm just going to move down here in my basic panel a little bit, and if I tap the J key, I actually have a few little blue areas here. So I need to move up my black point so that I'm not clipping my black point at all. And I also want to come down and move up my clarity. And you'll notice sometimes, like if you move your clarity all the way over, and I hadn't moved those black points, and we tap the J key again, you can see that the clarity sometimes pushes your values to pure black too. So you definitely want to make sure, if you're going to add a lot of clarity, that you definitely pay attention to whether or not you're pushing some areas or clipping some areas to pure black. And that you can do that. It just means there's going to be black in your image without detail, and that should just be a conscientious choice. So I'm going to pull up on my blacks again until all the blue disappears there. Okay, I'm also going to go through and just, I need to even out the lighting up here on the left and the top, so I can do that with a graduated filter. I have a very limited area where I can move my lights in my little office-y room, and so I can't quite get back far enough here, plus there's all this window light that's coming in. So all I'm going to do is set my exposure down a little bit and just click and drag in from the left. Now, it looks like I've also got a color loaded in here, so let's scoot down and change this green color here to no color. So now, if we use the little toggle switch here, we can see that I'm just bringing in a little bit of light. It looks like it's a little bit too much, so I'm just going to click in that exposure area and then I'm going to use my up arrow just to increase the amount there. So you can see that it's making my exposure less dark there, and then if I use the down arrow, of course, it's decreasing the exposure. So let's go right about to there. And then I need to add another one, so I'm going to click and drag in. I forgot, I should have, between those, I should have just removed this green and set that as my default, but that's easy enough to change. And again, I think that's a little bit too dark, so I'll use the up arrow there. And we can also reposition these, right? So if I want to go back to the first one, I can obviously reposition that by just clicking on the pin, or I can select the other one, and we can make changes to that. I can even rotate that if I want to, if the angle's not quite right. All right, when I'm finished, let's go ahead and put that tool back. And then I want to go ahead and zoom in here, and we'll just close this left panel. I'm going to start at the top, and I'm just going to get my brush here and heal some areas. And again, I'm doing this in Lightroom because I want to get as far as I can here before I go to Photoshop. Now, even though I'm going to open this up as a smart object, once I open the smart object into Photoshop, there's not going to be a relationship with this image anymore. So what will happen is I'll open up this file from Lightroom to Photoshop. It'll bring it in as a smart object, but that smart object will then be embedded in that PSD file. It will have nothing to do with this image right here. So let me just quickly see if there's any more dirt over here. I think there might have been two more clods here. Not only the dark stuff am I getting rid of, but also kind of this lighter area. And you know, I know this isn't necessarily what the tool was intended to do. The tool was really intended to remove dust from the sensor, but it works just fine when you've got small areas like this. And all I'm trying to do is get rid of any distracting elements, right? Because I don't want you to be distracted by all this dirt that's on the background. I'd rather just clean that up. All right, once we're done, we can go ahead and just put that tool back and then zoom back out. So I've done as much retouching, oops, except for this big clod there. Let's get rid of that. Oh gosh, might want to do this. All right, so this is the bad thing about being tidy, is that I will go in here and overdo this. So this is fine for the demonstration. All right, now let's zoom back out. Now at this point, I might also add just a bit of a vignette. And the great thing is that I can go as far as I want here, and I don't really have to worry about the fact that that I'm making these changes, because these don't have to be permanent changes. I can always change these later, as long as when I choose to edit this, I edit it as a smart object in Photoshop. So that's what I'm going to choose to do at this point. And that will go ahead and open this up. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with smart objects, the reason that I did it this way is because if we go to my layers panel, if I want to make a change and I double click on the thumbnail for this layer, what's going to happen is Photoshop is going to basically choose layer and then smart objects and then edit the contents. Now, before I choose this, I just want to show you, I actually have another version of this open. I don't want you to be confused, but I am going to steal a path from here in a moment. So I have this document open, but the document we're working on is this document. So when I double click on this and edit the contents of it, the great thing is when Lightroom handed off this smart object, it embedded the raw file within this Photoshop document. So when I double click and bring up the contents, I am editing them in camera raw and I'm not losing any quality. So I might want to make a change, for example, to the temperature. I'm just going to scoot this over a little bit and make it a little bit more towards the yellow, a little bit warmer. And then I'm going to take this tint slider right here, and I'm just going to make this a little bit greener. Now, I also am going to come down here to my highlights and look at, you can see that I can bring this over to the right without clipping my highlights, and that's just going to add a little bit more contrast there, so I'll do that as well. My whole point here is, yes, I could have done this in Lightroom, but it's great to know that if you don't do something in Lightroom and then you bring it over as a smart object, all of this that you do in Photoshop is non-destructive. All right. So at this point, I want to change the color of the shovel. To me, it's just a little bit too yellow. It's got a little bit too much vibrance in it as well, so I just want to tone that down. And again, this is something I probably could have done in Lightroom, right? Lightroom has an adjustment brush, and I could go in and I could paint that in. But it's going to be much quicker for me to use the pen tool instead. So I'm going to tap the P key, that gives me the pen tool, and I'll go ahead and zoom in here to 100%, and we'll just scoot around. I'm holding on the space bar, that gives me the hand tool so that I can go ahead and move around my image. And then I'll just start drawing with the pen tool, making sure that I'm creating a path. So the way you draw with the pen tool is you click and drag in the direction that you want the path to go. All right, so I'm going to click and drag, and then come down here and click and drag. Now, sometimes it's difficult to drag in one direction but not in another direction. So if I hold down the R key, not tap it, if I tap the R key, I'm going to get the rotate view tool. But if I just hold it down and click and drag, I can actually rotate the canvas. Now, that's not rotating the image. It's like you have a photograph on the desk and you've actually just rotated that photograph. If you haven't actually altered the image, you've just rotated it, because it's much easier for me to draw a path like this in this direction than it is the other direction. All right, so I would just continue on and draw this path all the way around the shovel. If I do tap the R key, that does bring me to the rotate tool, and then I can tap escape and that will automatically straighten it for me. So I don't think that I necessarily have to go through and draw this path all the way around it. That's kind of a waste of time. So I have this other document open that I showed you a moment ago, and it's actually the same size. If we were to zoom in, you would see that. And I have a path here already saved. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to view both of these images next to each other. So I'll go ahead and go to Arrange and then Tile. And I'm going to grab the path and drag and drop it onto this other document. And that way it will align perfectly. Now I'm going to return to a single document, and you can see I have keyboard shortcuts that allow me to quickly go between consolidating to tabs and tiling. And those are just custom keyboard shortcuts that I've set up. But now we're back to this image with our nice path on it. And if I've got the path selection tool, I can click on that path and then use the keyboard shortcut Command Return to turn that path into a selection. If you don't want to do it that way, I can deselect. You can just click on the path on the Paths panel and then click on the icon right here that looks like the marching ants, and that will turn that path into a selection. Okay, so now I want to add an adjustment layer. So from the bottom of my Layers panel, I'll click on the Adjustment Layer icon, and I want to add the black and white adjustment layer. And one of the reasons that I have my Layers panel kind of midway down the screen is because I add a lot of adjustment layers in Photoshop, and it's really nice once you add the adjustment layer, look where my cursor is in comparison to the Properties panel. So I don't have to go all the way down to the bottom and add my adjustment layer and then go find the Properties panel up at the top. It's all contained right there in one area. In fact, that's why I also have my tools over here on the right-hand side, because there's no reason to go back and forth from the left side of your screen of your tools all the way back to your Layers panel, and then all the way back to your tool, and all the way back to your other panels. It's just easier to put your tools over there on the right, at least for me. Okay, so I added this black and white adjustment layer, but it's too much, right? At full opacity, it created a mask that is displaying the shovel as if it's black and white. But it's just a little bit too much, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the opacity slider here and just bring back some of that color without it being full. So here it is without it. You can see it's a lot more vibrant, and here it is with that. All right, now I need to add a few more layers. So let's go back to Lightroom. And I've got these two layers right here, this texture and then this wallpaper. So I want to open both of these. I'll use Command E here. Now I know this file, since it's a TIFF file, it's actually probably sized just about right. So I'm just going to edit the original here. Now again, I want to see all of my images open. So I'm going to use Command Shift T. That was the keyboard shortcut here that I had set up under Arrange to tile my images. So I'm going to tap the V key, and I'm going to use the Move tool to drag this texture on top of the image that we're working on. And then I don't need that one open anymore. And in fact, I also don't need the one that I stole the path from, so I'm going to close that as well. And then we'll scoot back to Lightroom, and I'll grab the wallpaper image. So this time, instead of using Command or Control E to open it up, I'm going to right mouse click, and I'm going to say edit in, and I'm going to open it as a smart object because I'm not really sure about this one. The other one I pretty much know that I just need to scale it up and use it. But this one, I'm not sure about the color, I'm not sure of the density, I'm not sure how these two images are going to blend together. So it's in my best interest, if I want that flexibility, to keep this as a smart object. Okay, we're going to tile the images again. Grab my move tool, drag and drop that over, select this image again, and then close it without changes. Now, let's take a look at layer 1 first. This is my texture. So I'll just rename that in my layers panel. And then just use Command or Control T, that's the shortcut, right, for free transform. And then I can just hold down the Option and the Shift key, or the Alt Shift key if you're on Windows, and that will help me scale from the center and just scale up in keeping the proportion of the image. Tap Enter or Return. And now this texture, I need to change the blend mode because obviously I want this to blend with the shovel and the weed. So let's try maybe a soft light. That's just going to give me a little bit of a texture. It's still a little too much for me, so I'm going to change the opacity down a little bit till I like it. All right, now we've got the wallpaper. Now this is a smart object, so this is nice. I can transform this up. It will have to resample the image up, but that's okay. It gives me the flexibility if I want to transform it smaller or larger later to not continuously re-interpolate the pixels. So again, smart objects, I know they make your files a little bit bigger, but they give you a lot more flexibility. So I'll tap Enter or Return, and obviously I can reposition that if I want to. What I do want to do is I want to change the blend mode for this as well. So I could try soft light again, like I did with the texture, but I know that soft light doesn't add quite as much contrast as overlay, so let's try that one as well. And I like that a lot better, except the color looks terrible, right? So again, this is a good reason to have this be a smart object. Instead of going back to Lightroom and getting the file again and bringing it back over and resizing it and everything, I'll just double click on the thumbnail. That allows me to edit the contents of that smart object. I come in here, convert it to grayscale, but I also have a lot of control. So let's say it didn't offer enough contrast. Well, I could come in here and add more contrast. I could go ahead and bring my blacks down. I could bring my whites up if I want to. And then click OK, and it's going to create that custom conversion, and I didn't lose any quality. So that's fabulous. It's a little too strong right now, so I'm going to tap V to make sure that I have the Move tool, and then I'll just tap maybe 4 to get 40%, maybe 5 to get 50%. And I'm liking the way that that looks, except that I really don't like all that texture and everything on top of the plant and on top of the shovel. So I need to get rid of that. Well, it's very convenient. I happen to already have the mask of the shovel. You know, there is something I forgot to show you, so I'm just going to hide these two layers for a minute. The mask that I created for the shovel, if we go and zoom in to 100% here, I just want to see, okay, the mask looks really quite good, but I want to show you that sometimes when you create a mask with a pen tool, you might get a little bit of a halo or something. So it's really good to know that when you have a mask selected, if you go to your Properties panel in Photoshop CS6, there is a feather slider right down here. And this feather slider, let me just scoot this up, this feather slider is really helpful for just softening the edge. So let me turn this all the way up to 100%. Maybe we can see a little difference here. See, now you can see that the mask has a nice soft edge. And so we're getting a little bit more of that, the shovel showing through, whereas if we pull the feather way down, see how it's a much crisper edge coming right along the side. So when I make a path with a pen tool and turn that path into a selection, I don't usually add a feather at that point in time because I don't know how much of a feather to add. Instead, I'll just add the hard edge mask, and then I can add this non-destructive feather later on. And it's saved me a number of times, especially if I decide later on to change the size of an object, because you know, a large object in a file might need a feather of like 3, whereas when you scale that down, 3 might be too soft of an edge. You might need to change that. So I use this feather slider all the time. Okay. Getting back, we were adding the texture, the 2 texture layers here, and I'll go ahead and zoom back out. And now that I've got these 2 texture layers, I would like to make use of that shovel mask again And I want both of those texture layers to be masked by the same mask. So I'm going to grab both of them and I'm going to put them in a group by using Command or Control G. All right, and we'll just rename these textures. Now, what I want to do is I want to make a duplicate of this shovel mask. So I'll hold down the Option key or the Alt key on Windows and just drag that up to the textures group. Now I need the opposite of that, so you'll notice right here on the Properties panel, we can just invert the mask. So now the texture is in the background area, but it is not in the shovel. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my paintbrush, and I'm going to get a very small brush, and I'm going to make sure that I'm painting with black now, and I'm also just going to paint out the texture in this plant. All right, now I would take a little bit more time to do this and go up and do every stalk, but I'm not going to waste the time right now doing it. All right, so that will be good enough for now. That painted the texture out of here. And now, remember I went in and on that black and white adjustment layer, I made a change up to 100% opacity, and I don't want that. I'm going to bring that back down and get a little bit more color there from the shovel. All right, now, the mask that has the, that's masking the textures here, I might want to change just the feather just a little bit. You don't want the same mask to be used twice in the same document, or you might get a little bit of edge artifacting. So just by changing the feather a little bit, we're going to eliminate that risk. And remember, if I decide now that anything needs to be changed, because they're all on their own layers, it's really easy to change them. So, for example, if I want to go to my texture, because I think that the wallpaper is a little too strong, we can decrease the opacity there. I could edit the contents if I think maybe there's not enough contrast in it. I could also come in and just add maybe an adjustment layer here at the top. I'm going to add just a curves adjustment layer. I'm going to bring the whole image down just a little bit. All right, and that's just kind of a guess by eye. But then let's bring curves above my textures, so it's at the top of the layer stack. And I'm going to fill that mask, my curves adjustment layer mask, with black. Because what I really want is I kind of want the opposite. I want this area to be a little lighter and this area to be darker. This curve is making the whole image darker. So by filling this with black, which I can do by just using the keyboard shortcut Option, Delete, or it would be Alt and then Backspace on Windows, that fills the mask with black. I can grab a large paintbrush, like really big, and maybe change the opacity to just like maybe 30% or so, and tap the X key so that you're painting with white. And now we can just kind of burn in this area right here and this area. Right, so do you understand what I did was I added a curve to darken down the whole image a little bit, but then I hid that curve from everywhere. And then I just revealed it in the area of the image that I think is a little bit too hot to kind of even out the lighting here. All right, so at this point I would go ahead and make sure that I save this image, right? That's very important. And then one note just before we finish and wrap this up, I just want you to make sure that you know that if you go in and you edit the contents of the smart object like we've been doing, you should just know that any changes that you make here in this Photoshop document, those changes are not going to be reflected in the document in Lightroom. So once you're in Lightroom and you say open as a smart object in Photoshop, there's no link between your original RAW file and that PSD file. The RAW file that we're working with, that smart object in the Photoshop document, lives inside that Photoshop document, and there's no link back to this Lightroom image. That's why at the very beginning I wanted to go as far as possible in Lightroom so that this would, kind of be my starting point. But at the same time, I opened it as a smart object because I wanted that extra flexibility. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight into my creative process. I think we started with a decent image, but I think by taking that image into Photoshop and using all of its layers and masking techniques, we're really able to improve it. My name's Julieanne Koss. Thanks for watching.